Hi everyone, thanks for tuning into the Radults podcast, the podcast that highlights the stories of people who said fuck that to the idea that growing up means giving up on your dreams, and instead turn those dreams into their reality. Today's guest is Emily Kelly. Emily is the Director of Publicity and Creative at Melbourne's Deathproof, a company that describes itself as a tight-knit, weird-looking family of industrious music lovers that combine a bounty of professional and personal experience to offer a veritable shitstorm of skills for Australian and international clients in music, arts and entertainment worlds. Emily has over 15 years of experience working in the Australian music industry as a publicist, and in her role as Director of Creative, she thrives on cooking up challenging concepts that stray beyond the confines of conventional public relations. One of the founders of Deathproof, alongside her friend Rebecca Reato, Emily is most definitely a Radult, and is today's guest on the Radults podcast. We're here at the Deathproof PR headquarters with Emily Kelly. Emily, tell the listeners who you are and what you do.
That's so much. I'm Emily, obviously. What I do is really difficult. It's actually really difficult to... What do other people say? Do they do it in a sentence? Do they go, I'm a photographer, and is that it?
There's no wrong way to answer this.
You can bullet point it.
Yeah.
I run a company called Deathproof, who works in music, specifically in Australia. It gets a whole lot more complicated after that. We used to do just PR, but now we do a lot of other things as well.
Complication's good, though.
Yeah, I mean, but it's kind of complex to explain. Marketing and events, content, you know. I don't like being one of those people that kind of goes, oh, management and marketing and content and PR, because it's like, what the fuck does that mean? You know, people
you actually
have
look at it, that one word in the thesaurus has all those other words just involved
exactly.
with it.
And I feel like a lot of people just say they do sales and marketing and content and PR and record label and touring, because everyone kind of has businesses that do all those things.
If it was a Venn diagram, it'd all be touching, but at the same time, there'd be lots of different circles in it.
Exactly. The middle would just say music stuff.
Yeah. It ends up just being one circle, and it's just like music stuff.
Yeah,
and then it goes like, we've made it easier for you. Obviously, music is a big deal, you know, for you and I guess in everyone that works at Deathproof.
Yep, definitely.
How did you get into the music industry, and then what level did you, or what stage did you realise that that's something that you wanted to pursue?
I always loved music in high school, like everyone did. Got obsessed with it right at the wrong time, right when my studies mattered in Year 12. I was a really great student, and then Year 12 came along and I discovered Limp Bizkit. But I became really obsessed with it then, and then I went to this school where they kind of force you to go to university afterwards. Like, it's kind of like there's no other choice except to keep studying. And I was like, okay, what sounds remotely like music? Did media degree. And then I wanted to work in music, so I basically looked like on the internet and was like, what jobs allow you to do like writing and journalism, and music journalist came up, but that I did some writing and freelance stuff, but it doesn't pay particularly well, as everyone knows, and I found out that communications role in the music industry is basically known as PR. So I went and hit up a bunch of people, and I was writing a column for a Beat magazine at that point, like a punk and hardcore column that I did for ages. And my editor knew that there was a PR department opening at Shock Records, and he suggested me for the job, and I went in and got the job, and it was like my dream job. Straight out of uni, I thought it was the best job in the whole world, and then I was in. Have been ever since.
Coming in that early, like straight out of uni, into a company as big as Shock, did you find it hard to find your footing at first? Were you kind of overwhelmed by everything that was going on around you, or did you just immediately go, I've got this?
It was funny because you don't have any basis of comparison. So like, it was actually perfect. But if I had any other job before that, I would have gone in and been like, what is this place? But I just thought all full-time jobs were that crazy and chaotic and fun. But there was a steep learning curve for a while there. I certainly came in to my job interview wearing like a little power suit and high heels, and I remember leaving the interview and he's like, by the way, like, you don't have to wear that. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. But it was a really inclusive, fantastic company to work for, so it was very easy to find your footing because it was just full of weirdos, full of freaks and weirdos and really fascinating people, all forces unto themselves, all very lovely. It was like a company just full of freaks and misfits and people who loved music. So you couldn't really, the only way you could stick out is if you were inauthentic, and wouldn't be a problem for an 18.
You'd be more weird wearing that power suit than wearing jeans and t-shirt.
Yeah, exactly right. And they probably wouldn't really, that company wouldn't have really liked someone who walked in there wearing a power suit and high heels. But if you just be yourself at a place like that, it worked well for you. So it was a sweet job.
Unfortunately, it's a job that had to end, as it did for everyone that worked at Shock Records. Great companies, unfortunately, don't last forever. But it did present you with a somewhat unique opportunity in that you could start your own company with Rebecca. Beck. So you decided to launch Deathproof as Deathproof PR at that point in time?
Yeah, that's right.
What made you make that choice, and how confident were you doing it?
So Shock wasn't like over yet, but it had changed a lot. Like I said, it was this crazy, chaotic place full of amazing people, and it had an incredible roster of artists. It was the biggest independent label in Australia. So anyone that wasn't essentially signed to a major label was signed to Shock. So you can imagine the great stuff we had. But things started going downhill just because the music industry in general started becoming less profitable. We got bought out by a company that didn't understand music at all. So huge changes were made. A lot of the artists left, a lot of the record labels that we distributed left. As a result, a lot of the fantastic people that worked there started to leave. And eventually we all got moved to this old telemarketing office. We were allowed to put one poster up at our desks. Everything was tighter budgets, and our bosses were a lot less, weren't a fan of our casual dress code even anymore. Stuff
comes
like that.
back the power suit.
The power suit comes back.
Exactly.
And the life drains from your eyes.
Becca always says that her turning point was she came into the office the day after the Arias, and she had really sore feet from wearing high heels all night, so she was sitting behind her desk wearing no shoes, and the boss came in and went, "No, put shoes on, please." And she was just like,
table flip.
Yeah, well, it says something about like how relaxed and comfortable it was, and then when the ownership changed hands, so like the whole atmosphere changed. So we were like, okay, everyone's leaving. What are we gonna do? So we just thought we'd give it a crack. Heavy music was massive at that time. So it was about 2005, and Soundwave was kind of just finding its feet. Like it was the biggest festival in the country, and there are a lot of heavy bands coming up. Bring Me the Horizon is the example that always comes to mind. They were getting really huge, and they were getting signed to major labels. But a lot of majors still didn't really know what to do with bands like that. They knew that they were popular and profitable maybe, but it doesn't mean that their teams, who were used to dealing with, top 40 artists really necessarily knew how to promote a band like that. So, everyone was interested in heavy music, so we thought, as good a time as any to make ourselves a specialist heavy music company. There are a couple of independent PR companies that seem to be doing quite well, and we had friends at labels that we knew would back us if we went out on our own, so we thought, fuck it. We were both. I always say this as a caveat that we were mid-20s and we really didn't have any reason not to. Yeah. We didn't have kids or a mortgage or anything. I had a long-time partner that was like, yeah, fucking do it. Like, I've got your back if, money gets tight or something. So there wasn't a lot to lose apart from our jobs, which we weren't necessarily enjoying that much anyway. So, people always say, oh, it's amazing to make that jump, and like, wow, so brave. And my best mate, when opened the cafe, not too long afterwards, and she was like, if you can do it, I think I'll be able to do it. I'm like, I opened a fucking cafe. Like, that's huge. Like, the financial input for a small business like that is massive. But for us, the risks were relatively small.
You were more risking your social currency and your networking currency than
we're just
your
risking
actual
our
currency
jobs.
or
like
your
if
jobs.
it didn't work out and then we couldn't get another job, that would have been a little bit embarrassing and slightly awkward. But I mean,
surely that being backed into a corner like that by your own decision, though, probably influenced you to take it incredibly seriously at the start.
Totally, yeah. And I reckon diving into something like that full-time makes a huge difference too. I know some people who started like an endeavour part-time or casually or something, but when you just like straight up cut out your full-time job and then next week you're sitting at your desk with your laptop and a blank screen going, my job now is to hustle really fucking hard to make this work. Yeah, you are more driven because you've got 40 new hours in the week that you never had before.
Exactly.
And if you don't make it work, then you're not going to be able to pay your rent. So there's something to be said for diving head first in.
And yeah, exactly that. I mean, like, to an extent, outside of, like, face value, your friend that opens the cafe has a little bit more, like, to lose as far as the shop front. Whereas to begin with, if you really wanted to, there's certain, segments of your job that you could do from a bedroom or from a kitchen table.
Yeah.
It's only, once I guess you get that office space like you have now, that you go, all right, well, you can lose that, anything like that. Whereas for your friend to compare and go, oh, well, if you can do it, it's like, well, hold on. There's a little less upfront costs to do this than... to open a cafe.
Totally. Like, she had leased an entire, shop front and employed staff straight off the bat and was making her investment back a $3.50 latte at a time, which fills me with dread, that business model. And it was an incredibly hard slog for her, whereas for us, I think Beck and I we had like $2,000 in savings each, and we put that into a company account, and then we bought ourselves some $500 laptops, and that was it. There was no other upfront costs for us, so it's minimal.
I don't think that makes the leap any smaller though. Like,
No.
I think that you've still got to. It's more the cost. Like, I think that you had just as much chance to fail or succeed as someone opening, a cafe or a shop front. It's more, I think. You've got, because there was less upfront costs, you've got more time to fail or succeed. Like, I think you've got a longer time period to...
Yeah, true.
Like, the safety net lasts a little bit longer. Moving from that, what do you find the biggest challenge was starting out?
Business-based, boring, administrative things. We knew how to do our jobs like in our sleep. That was no problem at all. But it was the tax and the accounting and the stuff that we still to this day fuck up on the regular. You know what I mean? Just those adult things. Even putting a business plan together was really difficult. I remember the business plans were like, where do you want to be in 5 years? And we're like, fuck, I don't know.
Still
like in
here?
a job?
Still open?
Yeah. Like, literally our plan was like, in a job, if this work can pay our rent, that would be amazing. And that was the extent. Because when you start out, how do you know, like, where you want to be in 5 years? I still don't know.
Yeah. I think that because you're starting out and it's your first time doing it on your own, you can only measure yourself against who else has done it, but only if you've known who's done it and at what point. Shop was around for however long to get to where they were. Yeah. Their 5-year plan wouldn't have been to get to where they were.
And so many things come up, like sideball, just the curveballs rather, that you don't anticipate happening, and all business related rubbish that's quite hard for you to take on. You're basically Googling things like, how do I write a business plan, and what does this mean, and what does like a partnership mean as opposed to like a company. It's just boring rubbish. It's never really been our strong suit, and we don't find ourselves to be particularly ambitious or driven. We don't have a plan for domination. Like, honestly, the whole point of Deathproof has been to work with music that we love and for it to pay the rent. And these days it's to be a bit flexible. We like to do, you know, I need to raise a kid outside of it, and Beck likes to study, and if our jobs can continue to sustain us in those very modest ways, then we're happy. We don't want to be a massive company. That sounds stressful.
It does sound stressful, and I just don't think it would vibe with the kinds of musicians and also the kinds of festivals and organisations you work with.
Yeah, maybe not. It's a huge company.
A huge company?
Yeah, maybe. It depends on the work that we're doing. We are obviously a lot bigger. We've got more employees now than we've ever had because we kind of don't just do PR anymore. But we find having staff quite stressful because we are a little bit of a small family, and whenever we hire people, like, we look at our office, like, that's teeny. Like, there's nowhere to get away from each other in that office, so you kind of turn into family, and it's very stressful having to pay someone else's superannuation and cover their tax and cover their sick days and provide them with work and know what their personal circumstances, like, HR, not into it. Again, the adult things we're just not into. So that's probably the main deterrent from us becoming too big, because it's a lot of work and it's a lot of pressure on us.
Your definition of too big is probably very different to other people's definition of too big, in that I would consider this to be quite a large agency, at least in terms of the music business, and definitely in terms of the heavy music spectrum. Were you surprised how well you evolved the business and how successfully you evolved the business from where you started?
Yeah, I think we were surprised. I think we got thrown a lot of freebies, I have to say. Like, we've had the most unsuspecting encounters turn into, like, huge opportunities for us. You know, people that we've bumped into at events, or someone we've drunkenly bought a Tecate for at South by Southwest at 2 a.m. at last drinks turned into, like, a long-term relationship for us. You know what I mean? We've had some weird things come up. I think we're super lucky about the things that have come our way. We haven't necessarily hustled hard for it. We've had stuff drop in our lap, but it's been fortuitous because we're okay at making mates, and, you know, we have a rule about not working with dickheads. We only work with people that we like, and I think if that's reciprocated, it breeds, you know, more and more relationships and people who will vouch for you. You know, you hear that people rate you, you know, based on your work, or just not. We pride ourselves on not being assholes either. You'd be surprised how many opportunities that can open up for someone when you just
don't be an asshole.
Make sure you pay everyone that does work for you, or pay, you know, at a reasonable time, usually well before their invoice deadline is due, and you thank them very much for their work, and you don't burn bridges on yourself, and it's like a basic foundation for a business, but a lot of people don't adhere to it.
It sounds like not just a basic foundation for a business, but a basic foundation for a successful life. It doesn't make sense to me why
it seems like common sense.
People wouldn't take that approach generally. But you mentioned that things have just fallen into your lap in terms of, like, buying a beer at South by Southwest. But I would counter that train of thought as being you created that opportunity by being there.
Yeah.
And
costs
knowing
a lot too.
knowing where to be.
Yeah, maybe.
Is important, and taking advantage of opportunities when they get given to you. You're saying you got an opportunity out of buying someone a beer at South by Southwest, but you didn't. You got an introduction or something out of that, and then you capitalized on and made it an opportunity and turned it into a business relationship.
That's really flattering. Thanks.
No, the point I'm getting at there is, do you think that has been integral to the success, the ability to do that, to see, because most people would just see that as, oh, I don't know who you're talking about, but hey, I met up with Matt Corcoran at a fucking music festival, and we had a beer together, and I took a photo, and he said I was good, and that's it. Right? Most people might take that out of their out of it. But what you've taken out of it is there's an opportunity to work with someone to further their brand.
Yeah. I think, PR is a lot about relationships as well. Like, we always kind of lament the fact that it's hard for us to have new people come in and do PR because we can't give them the friendships that we have forged over 15 years in the job. Do you know what I mean? Like, surely you can hire someone to do work for you, but a lot of the work that you manage to generate and the goodwill that you generate comes from 15 years of having positive interactions and relationships with people. So I suppose that has something to do with it. Like, you're not going to be a very good publicist if you can't capitalize on those opportunities. It's like a warm lead when the journalist mentions that they might like this band, and you're like, oh, remember that.
Yeah.
I think that friendship is like the best way of networking, though.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, the best example I'd give is like crowdsourcing and crowdfunding now is the biggest it's ever been in the world. So you're pretty much asking for money as a pre-order for something. So let's just say you wanted to release an album.
Yeah.
You don't have the money for it. Put it up on Kickstarter and go, oh, look, if you pay $20, when this ends, you get the record. Mm-hmm. And what I've found with that is a lot of people want your money for nothing, or expect that as soon as, I send Brenton a friend request, I can then cold message him and go, hey, so like my record is currently on this crowdfunding thing. Can you go and buy it?
Yeah.
It's like, no, hold on. They need to see the work that you've put in first, and you've got to put work in that friendship as well, and go, oh, like, hey, blah, blah, blah. So that when he turns around and he goes, buy my album, I can be like, oh yeah, cool, like I've seen everything that's led up to that. I know what you are like as a person, and you didn't hit me up with that straight off the bat. Because it's the quickest way to go, like, no. And so I think that's the same. You say, like, things fell in your lap, but you built relationships that allowed for that to happen, so that when the time came, it's not that you're, like, knocking on anyone's door asking for this. It's that they go, hold on, no, like, we trust you from before, and that everything that led up to it.
That's so nice, you guys. You're being way too nice. I guess that is true.
Working in the heavy music community, specifically at the start, one I think was very smart in terms of it capitalized on the connections you already had.
Yeah.
But it did give you a unique selling perspective, like a USP. And I think that community tends to support itself. So say you were really good with your first client, they would then tell another band that, hey, it's totally worth investing the money in a publicity campaign.
Yeah. Using
these people in Australia.
Yeah.
Which is probably the most difficult part of your job, I would say, is convincing people that you're worth the investment to do what you do. Because most people see PR or publicity or marketing as being, you just throw together some collateral and you upload it onto social media, you make a couple of Facebook events, and you email everyone.
Yeah.
Which is completely not
not how it works.
Not how it works. No. I guess my question there is, did you find that a lot of your early success came from other acts telling people that you did a good job?
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. I mean, artists are always going to talk to one another about who to trust and who to work with. That's a massive one. But I don't think... We definitely didn't do a lot of trying to convince people to take on PR. I don't think we have ever done that, because it's something that I feel that especially younger bands need to realise that they want to invest in and then come to us. There's only one instance where we've done that, where we saw a band very early on and we thought, they are fucking great. We want to work with you. Maybe there's like 3 or 4 instances of 8 years where we've seen a band and gone, like, we'll just offer them our help, often at no fee or a very small fee, just because we think they're at the perfect spot and they, like, people need to hear them. But often we don't try and convince bands to take on PR, because it's a really, the whole concept of PR is a really, really tricky one to navigate. It costs money,
Yes.
and I know how few bands have available funds to do it, and I would never be in there trying to fight for a piece of that pie. I know there are a lot of places they can invest that money that might be better. A lot of the time bands aren't really always ready for it. I think they should really try and do it themselves before they come to us. We often tell them go away and try and do that single or EP PR on your own, and then get an idea of what a shit fight it is.
Yeah.
And then we can talk about it, do you know what I mean? Because PR is this weird exchange, right, where you're paying someone for their time and their contacts and their understanding of the music, and you're paying them to do their very best to present that to their media contacts and generate press for you. But sometimes it's not a linear like exchange. Like, it's not, you pay us this much, you get this in return. It straight up isn't. So at the end of some campaigns, the results you see at the end might not be what you had anticipated, and it might not be what the PR had anticipated. Those campaigns suck so hard because you know that they have invested money into it and they haven't got the returns they want, but at the end of the day they were paying for a publicist to use every resource at their disposal to help them, and if it didn't translate, you need to sit down and assess what happened and whether it's worth going back in again. It's a tricky exchange. For very young bands, it's not one that we like to enter into too quickly because we understand you've worked fucking hard for that money and we're not in any rush to try and take it from you and give me your cash. It's hard.
You're not the vultures circling just waiting
Fuck,
for the...
there are. I think there are
some.
some companies that do that, but I'm very skeptical of the ones that sit on Triple J Unearthed and then just hit everyone up going, do you want us to do PR for you? That has red alarm bells kind of flashing for me. But yeah, I would be cautious about working with people like that. Having just admitted that I did approach bands, you know, off the back of a performance before, I would be hesitant to deal with people that ask for your money.
Yeah.
I suppose that does open up an interesting line of questioning, though, and that is, how do you choose who you work with?
Yeah. It's like a intricate, like, little gauntlet that they have to run, I guess, in our minds. Like, there are multiple factors. No arseholes.
That seems... But arseholes can become arseholes after
That's
the
true.
fact.
Absolutely can. No, we look, if someone emails us, we would usually take into account what else we have coming up. We don't take on too many bands that sound the same or at the same level in their careers at once because they're all approaching different media. We don't want to go to the same media and be like, we've got 5 bands, you know? Have a listen to them all. Like, that's not an effective way to
This
pitch.
is MySpace 2005.
Yeah. 5 bands and they all sound like pop punk from Melbourne. Go. Like, that's not going to be effective. So we won't take on too much of the same stuff. We will pay more attention if, probably admittedly, if a band has come to us with a team put together, like they might have someone that they're talking to about like managing them or maybe a promoter. If other bands we've worked with vouch for them, that's always a good sign. If they go, we just spoke to our mates in this band or this band and they work with you, okay, you know, trust again that the arseholes will be weeded out through that network. Often if they sound good, like not just to our taste, but often if we hear something and go, I think that is getting, that sound is quite popular at the moment. I can see that there are a lot of bands with that kind of approach are doing well. I can see, if you can listen to a song and go, I know exactly where that fits. The editor of this magazine would fucking love this.
Yep.
That video is really strong. I reckon I could get that straight onto Rage. If I can see that they're touring and gigging relentlessly and they're putting in the miles in a lot of other ways and not just doing like a show here or a show there. So I can see that they're very active. There are heaps of things that come into account. But mostly we'll just give it a spin and then see what everyone in the office says and see who's part of it, see what else we're doing. But we're pretty picky. I'd say we probably take on about like 15% of the jobs that come across our desks. So, but I think it's good to be picky. I think it's really, really important when your job is PR that you're only working with shit that you genuinely believe in.
So your no dickhead rule goes with the no asshole rule as well. So I mean, like, you've got to like...
Wait, what?
So, you know, you don't want to work with dickheads.
Yeah.
Like, you're like, nah. And you don't want to work with the assholes either. So as soon as you like cross those off, you go, all right, well, that gets it down to the 15% left.
Yeah, there's not many left after that. No, like I do think you like you've got to, if you're a band, you need to find a publicist who you feel genuinely likes your stuff.
Yeah.
You know, that's into it. You don't want to have to sell them on it. Like, I think so much of PR is going to your media contacts and going, trust me, I know you wrote about this band before, and you remember we went to that fucking gig ages ago, and I know that you generally cover this kind of stuff. Trust me, this is really good material. Like, if media start to cotton on that you're literally taking on any band that will throw $500 at you and just flogging it to them, like, the trust, that relationship is shot. Media don't care that band are paying you. Like, you've got 10 bands paying you $500, but if we come to them once every 3 months and go, love this, love these guys, trust us, I genuinely, you know, we can't exploit that relationship or we're completely shot.
Surely that's a particularly valuable thing in 2019 when it's possible for thousands upon thousands upon thousands of bands to release new music every single day via Spotify and iTunes and whatever else.
Yeah.
And there's so much noise with social media that for a journalist trying to cover what's coming up, it could be quite easy to get lost in that and not be able to identify what the new things are and just continue to write about the same stuff that you know is going to be successful. So you're almost working as a curator at the same time as working as a PR.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, I like to think that people at media know that we wouldn't take on rubbish or something just because we got paid for it. I like to think they trust us. And I like to think that they might understand what kind of stuff we generally take on and trust that in the last 8 years we have brought some really, really good stuff to them. So they might listen to us slightly more than someone else. But, you know, if they don't, that's fine.
At what point in PR is ego a good thing? Like, obviously, for instance, if a band approaches you and wants you to take them on and do work for them, obviously they've got to sell themselves. But at what point do you just go, like, that's the wrong attitude? Is there a level where you just go, you probably think too highly of yourself?
No, that doesn't come into it too much. We don't look at like individuals necessarily. It's mostly about the sound and what else they've been doing and got going on. That said, I did get hounded by a mail from a hardcore Melbourne band like incessantly on email recently, to the point where he emailed me going, can you work for my band? And then 4 days later he said, I was told you were good, but you haven't gotten back to me, so now I'm not like really sure what your deal is. That made me look his band up, so it worked.
Were they good?
I paid attention.
You don't have to say who it was, but were they
I
good?
don't even remember the band's name, but I looked the band up and listened to them, and I saw his picture and I was like, yeah, okay. I wrote back to him and I said, I was fine, I was polite. I said, sorry about the delay and to keep you waiting 5 days.
5 days is not waiting, sorry. But
It is because I'm good at my job that you had to wait this long.
I've got a lot of other shit going on. But yeah, to get a response from me, he was basically like, well, I heard you guys were good, but like, I don't believe it anymore. So
It's like those restaurants that they say, like, if you're walking down a busy street in the city and you see a restaurant's empty,
don't go there.
Don't go there. Right?
yeah, it's true.
Whereas you're probably better off waiting in line to go to that restaurant that's packed out, or get a reservation because there's a reason why they're full. So there's probably a good reason why you haven't got back to them yet.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, I don't know.
Well, before we delve too much further into reasons why you reject particularly persistent Melbourne hardcore bands, it might be a good chance to take our little rad break before we keep talking to you about Deathproof. So your rad break is going to be a bit of a fun one that I'm going to get Mike to take the lead on.
Mostly because I'm a massive Tarantino fan.
Yeah.
So,
oh my god, are you going to quiz me on Tarantino?
I
Are you
am.
going to quiz me on Deathproof?
Yeah,
Yes.
100%. So,
Oh no.
in this film,
Yeah.
the word fuck
Yeah.
is used how many times? A, 57 times, B, 279 times, or C, 148 times?
279.
No, that's incorrect. The answer
148?
is 148 times.
Damn it.
So, yes, the word fuck is used that many times.
I thought it would be more, to be honest.
Let's see if we can do it now. Fuck, 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 fuck.
To be fair, I think the one that has the most swear words, and it's not just the word fuck, it's every other word, is Django Unchained.
Oh, right. I haven't seen that.
It's wicked.
He uses the N-word a lot.
Do not watch it at 3 o'clock in the morning your time when you're flying back from Chicago back to Australia on like a solid flight. It's like an hour between flights.
Why not?
You get really disassociated with
even if
with
you watch
reality.
it on a tiny screen.
Yeah. I felt so dirty and wrong getting
Is it
off
one of
the
those
plane.
movies that you watch in the plane and there are some scenes where you're just like...
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
100%. I was sitting next to...
They shouldn't show them. Oh, wait, was it on your laptop? Or was it showing on
no, it was on the backseat monitor thing.
I've heard
and
that
I
with
was
sex
sitting...
scenes before, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
children!
And I don't know if you know much about that film, but I was sitting next to like an African American couple.
Yeah, I do, yeah. No,
And I felt like I was doing something very wrong.
No. Oh my god.
Yeah, it's one of those things. And then you also wonder how loud your speakers are.
Completely.
That you're listening, and they use some like
people
really
can't hear shit in
derogatory
planes,
terms on that.
Oh, okay. Oh my
Like-
god, I would not have watched that.
And I wouldn't have watched it on the phone.
I watched
What do you
Monsters
think?
University after it to
Shut
make
up.
up.
My problem is always crying on planes. Everything makes me cry.
I cried in Inside Out on the plane.
Of course you did.
Yeah.
Really sad and amazing.
It's the best kids film.
I don't think there should ever be a Tarantino film on any planes, though. Like, to be honest.
they're a bit graphic and violent
And he's known for, like, touching on topics that, like, regardless of what film it is, he touches on topics that not everyone agrees with.
Well, I mean, people can't hear it though, right?
I hope.
Or are you just saying they should take an ethical stance and...
Well, I don't know
Let's
what
not go
his view is with that, and it's not
Speaking of
mine to
assholes.
say.
Speaking of people that you used to trust and now you don't trust.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, see, that's the thing, though. He could be known, I guess, it depends on who you ask, as a dickhead or an asshole or something like that, but obviously he does something that works because of, look at what his movies do and the people that decide to work with him. Like, I would say that Django was a pretty... I can't say racist, because he portrays everyone as bad guys in it. But, like, Jamie Foxx agrees to do this movie, and, like, Kerry Washington. And I'm thinking, well, I don't know. I would read the script and go, oh, you know what? Like, and especially as, like, a Caucasian person, like, if I was Leonardo DiCaprio... I would probably be like, oh, this is something that I probably shouldn't touch. And mind you, he gets like nominated for an Oscar for it, for his character in it. But then it's at the same time that they go like, oh, but it's only acting. I'm going, yeah, I still don't think I want that part.
I think it's an interesting thing you're touching on, though, and it's totally related to your role in music as well, to an extent, in that art versus artist. Right? So how much does the person, like you've said, the no dickheads, no assholes rule, how much does the art matter versus the quality of the person in terms of how you approach working with them? But also, secondly, I'm really curious to know, without telling us any names, if there's been artists you've worked with at the start thinking they were good people, and now you would only stand by their art.
Or not even that.
Yeah.
Yes, there definitely has been that in the past. Where I have no problem distancing myself from a band if I don't end up liking them as people, for sure. And I've had bands that I've adored and then worked with, and then, you know, it's like when you meet a band that you love.
Yeah.
And then you're like, I wish I did not know you because that has ruined
Everyone
your
has that.
music
Yeah.
for me. It's happened on a couple of occasions, yeah.
And like that as well, like, again, not naming names, but like, there's been bands that have featured prominently in the news where like a single member has done something that
invalidates the rest of the band's existence.
At what point does that become unfair for the band?
Yeah, it's a tough one, isn't it?
You know, like, because if they're unaware of that person's, like, misdoings, at what, like, it's like, why should they be held accountable and that band gets tarnished, like, even if they move away?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. That actual topic came up. Melbourne Music Week held a series of talks at the end of last year, and they did an ethics panel, and they had Julian Burnside, I think, who's
QC.
He hosted it, moderated it, and they had like 6 music industry people sitting on it. It was really fascinating because he presented everyone with these ethical dilemmas in music that weren't easily solved. I think so much of the time you can easily, very comfortably draw your line in the sand and be like, well, I don't deal with abusers and I don't deal with misogynists and I'm comfortably over here. But I remember one of the questions he asked that really disrupted the whole room was like, what happens if you give an example if you've managed a band for 15 years and then you part ways with them and 5 years later it becomes apparent that the lead singer was abusive and has domestic violence charges made against him, and all of a sudden everyone is blacklining that band and people are going so far as to tarnish you with the same brush, but you don't work with them anymore and you didn't know about it, and it kind of put people in the music industry in the unenviable theoretical position of like, what happens if you were, for all intents and purposes, totally innocent and didn't know about something, but all of a sudden the industry has completely like pushed you aside in the same category as this guy. Like, how is that fair, and where do you draw the line when it happens? Obviously it was compelling because no one had the answer.
I reckon there is an answer. Like, there's a prominent heavy band now where the front man went to prison for doing something or trying to do something. In that time that he was in prison, the band continued on with another singer. Never reached the level of fame that they had prior. He's gone through their redemption, I guess, because he's spent his sentence in prison and gone through that and has came out and has been established back into the band. The band has now come back.
Oh, right. So they've reformed.
Yeah, and they're touring, and now recently there have been venues that have, I guess, been not involved with the going on. Someone has spoken up and gone, oh, I can't believe you're letting this band play here after they've done this. And they've been kicked off. So now he's dealing with the repercussions of his actions, even though he's just gone through his prison sentence. So by rights, they say that if someone comes out of prison, you're meant to be rehabilitated. You've served your consequence. But now he's getting the backlash that he couldn't have received while in prison. Like, at what point does it become okay, or like, is there sort of
I don't think there's not a a general answer, is there? It depends on how each venue and booker and record label and promoter and fan feels about redemption, I suppose. I dare say that all those people would listen to the general public's feelings, though, and if you've got a couple people shouting very loudly that are not comfortable with them returning, then what are you going to do? That's an interesting one. I don't know.
That's what it has been, exactly that, is on this tour, it's their first headline tour back, and they've been selling out venues. So obviously there's some sort of general consensus that they want the band back. But there have been those loudspeakers that have gone like, but do you remember when so-and-so did this? And so the band then has to... The venue is now in that difficult position to go like, do we ignore those people that are yelling out because we've sold out this venue?
Yeah, well, money starts talking quite loudly then, doesn't it? You just look at the Sticky Fingers mess.
Yep.
They're hated by a lot of people, and I think probably justifiably so, but they're also incredibly popular and have a huge fan base who's prepared to either separate the art from the artist or just straight up ignore the accusations. And if there are thousands and thousands of those people and they're all still happy to buy albums and sell tickets, then money's going to start speaking louder than any of those voices, isn't it? That's a great example.
It is. Let's move away from this topic. It's dark, and I know who you're talking
grim.
about, and I don't want to think
We're all
about it
just
really.
speaking in riddles, aren't we? Like,
There's one band that everybody knows who we're referring to.
Well, look, I can't get in any trouble as long as I don't say who it is.
Now, let's get on to something a little bit more fun, and that is that as at Deathproof, one of your roles is creative director, correct?
Yes.
Yep. So one of the things that you pride yourself on as a company or as an agency is that you look to break the mold of how PR is perceived and how campaigns are put together. What have been some of your favourite campaigns you've done, and why?
That's a really good question. Oh, I wish I had prepared for that one.
That's all right. I want to know off the cuff.
Nothing. I can't think of anything that comes to mind in terms of a different promotion. Or that said, Totally Unicorn did just play on the back of a truck in Sydney yesterday.
Well, there's no venues, so why not?
That's them, though. They are fantastic, and they came to us with a bunch of really fantastic ideas that they were willing to execute for their PR. So we went, cool, we'll help. I guess, and I think when we say that, it's more referring to just understanding that the old PR model of being like, I have an interview window here on Thursday between 1 and 2 with this band, and then filling it up and then moving on, which is pretty common and pretty old school, doesn't work anymore. Media is kind of disappearing, and our artists are getting often generic Q&As a lot of the time, and they're not really happy with that kind of coverage, and the old model kind of wasn't working. So I guess breaking the mold refers to approaches that perhaps are different for everyone involved, including the journalist and the band. We've tried a lot of things in the past. Some of them have been really well received, and some of them ruffled feathers and people didn't like it. But they were all... I feel like I need to explain that now because it sounds really vague. For example, we found that it was really important that our artists got to tell their stories thoroughly. So we would sit down with them for a really long session with an employee that we had that was a former journalist, and they would interview them, and we'd find great themes in their stories and things that they wanted to talk on. We'd like essentially splice their words up verbatim into pre-prepared pieces, basically, and we would offer them to journalists if they were time poor and still wanted to cover the artists, which was a thing happening a lot for us. People would go, I'd love to speak to Frank Carter, for example, but none of my journalists can do it. I don't have time. So that's quite hard for us to hear as PR, because we're like, there's a window there, and they're time poor. So we basically invested our resources and our money into making sure they still got that opportunity. So we offered people like basically a Word document that's just full of, Frank Carter is a hypothetical here, but full of his words and his story, and said that's yours to use if you want it. Didn't have any of our input. It was literally an interview, and did quite well. Often people really loved it because we were basically doing...
You're doing 50% of their job for them.
Kind of doing their job for them.
Yeah.
So a lot of people really appreciate it. It was a weird approach for us, but we thought, everyone kind of wins, and we're happy to help. But we did have some outlets. Look, to be honest, it was one that pushed back and said it was disrespectful of their job to think that we could do it for them, which wasn't our intention. It was anyway. So things like that. Well, we're not afraid to... PR's hard, page space is small, and we're trying to find ways to make sure that everybody still wins. Also, I guess breaking the mold means looking at other resources that we have available to us, whether it's marketing skills. We did a blog for a couple of years there called Blurg that we tried because we were looking into creating another outlet that people could speak on. It gave us a really fascinating insight into what goes behind the scenes for some bloggers and some websites. Like, it helped us understand how much time is required to go into making these things work. We stopped using it. It still exists. We stopped using it because we are time poor, but I think that was really interesting because we basically built our own platform, and a lot of media companies still do this and populated it with our band stuff, but also stuff that we liked personally, and so that was really interesting. And it can mean things too, from product seeding and partnerships, and just hooking them up with people that we know want to speak to bands like them, hooking them up with other bands on tour, basically using all of our resources to help promote the band. Not strictly, would you like to email this? Would you like to interview this band? Cool, just trying to be as creative as possible to help promote our bands and to make it work for everyone. So it's not easy. You can ruffle feathers and people don't appreciate it all the time, and it can end up costing you more money and taking more work from you and not generating the results. But we're up for it. If people have good ideas of how to do things differently, that's something we're always interested in exploring. Makes our jobs more interesting, and it can really work sometimes.
And I like sort of as well, like sort of the output that you can put even without really even trying. Like your website to begin with is you've managed to plug bands but also be a part of your bio. Like you've spoken about North Lane on it, Parkway on it, and then like the really clever one is like, and whatever totally unicorn genre fits into for this week.
Yeah, whatever.
And I'm thinking, that's good. And you've just made it that if anyone's sort of going through your website to find out a bit about it, they go, oh, so, well, that last sentence seems interesting. Let's go look out this band.
And I mean, Totally Unicorn.
Obviously, Totally Unicorn, anyone looks that up, they're probably going to be like, what did we just listen to? And then they go, well, what you've just said is apt.
Yeah.
Which also leads me on to a little bit more about your website and a little bit about you. It has been known that while you were working at Shock, you asked for a +6. Can you go into that a little bit? Yes.
No, I literally did. That was funny. Like that. I guess that was like one of your questions earlier. Like, what was it like coming into a record label straight off the bat? Because you just learn about things by fucking up all the time, don't you? Well, that was, I literally knew that a band was struggling to fill a festival hall show, I think it was, that we were working on. And the publicist working on it said, we've got a huge guest list. Does anyone want to come? And I was like, well, yeah, I will come. And if you're struggling to fill the room, I know at least 6 mates who want to come with. So I was like, you can put me down with a +6. And like so many harsh lessons, you knew the answer when you looked at her face. Yeah. And I was like, oh. And I think she said, you can have a +1. And I went, okay, cool, got it. Quite similar to the time that very early on in my time at Shock, we were reading... I might have to tell you to cut this out later. It depends how I feel about it.
Yeah, all right.
When we were reading the newspaper and Kate Moss had just been charged for cocaine use. And I read the headline out loud, and everyone was talking about it like, whoa, she's actually been arrested for cocaine use, blah, blah. And I was like, yeah, well, Seb's alright. You've never felt the air be sucked out of a room all at once from all these people that were like, what? So, and then I was like, oh, okay, got it. Gotcha.
You forgot that that's part of the currency of the music industry.
Yeah. No, I don't think it ever occurred to me until that point. Again, no one said anything, but I went, okay.
Which, honestly, I struggled. I don't think you'd be the only person to struggle with that.
No one talks about it overtly, so it's just one of these things. I mean, it happens all the time. You go and say something, and then you go, oh, no. Okay.
And even in your +6 scenario, like, how the fuck were you supposed to know?
Well, exactly. They needed to fill the room. Literally, the issue was that the room was going to look quite empty. So I was like, I can help.
That's it. It's like you said, you learn by fucking up.
Yeah, totally. And looking like
and unless it's not like you're going to get a guideline going like, oh, now you work here. Here you go. This is what you've got to go through. This is the code of conduct that you go through. It's a little bit more lax than working in like a corporate workspace.
Yeah, when you get pulled aside and go, listen.
So by asking for, I remember a friend was bringing CKY out, and they're like, "Yep, yeah, cool." And I had a couple of friends that were like big on CKY, and I was like, "Can I get some extra people added?" And that was at the Hi-Fi Bar in Melbourne. And they said yes, but they actually took like people's +1s away from them so that I could bring mine.
Oh no!
And obviously that's a big no-no that I didn't know at the time that they had done that. And then afterwards, I was like, oh yeah. And they go, you do know that we like stopped people bringing people because you took their +1s so that you could have them. I was like,
oops, sorry. Yep. Faux cars. That's alright. We're going to laugh about them now.
Yeah.
It's in the past.
Alright, so I'm curious to know, in terms of the artists you work with, how important is it to you that there's one person in the band at least that's quite a personality and therefore able to engage with media in a way that's going to tell their story? So you mentioned Frank earlier as an example, Frank Carter. Probably a publicist's dream, right? Very outspoken, seems to know what not to say as much as what to say in terms of creating controversy if wanted. Does it matter to you as a publicist or as a PR that we have...
No, it doesn't matter.
No.
Nah, I would never pick or choose someone because they didn't have like an outspoken front person in their band. But it's always helpful. It's helpful if you know that they're comfortable with media and happy to talk to media and are capable of, you know, providing a couple nice pull quotes. We did PR for Johnny Rotten maybe 5 years ago now for his band Pill. And that was a fun one to work with. Because we were like, okay, well, this is going to do itself. And of course, it 100% worked itself. Like, a couple awkward interviews, and then the whole thing just took off like a wildfire. And we were like, all right. But that's how he works. That's one of those examples of all press is good press.
Yep.
Which
do you believe that?
No, I mean, I think it's a case-by-case basis, but that's how he works. Like, that's literally his machine, is just saying what he wants, and then he knows he has to deal with the repercussions, and he rides it, and, you know, and media love it. Media literally positioned themselves for interviews with him, ready for him to say shit.
Yeah, of course.
They wanted him to say shit. Like, that's why a lot of people take a Johnny Rotten interview on live-to-air TV, because they're like, watch this.
Yeah.
So... everyone was complicit in that one, but no, it doesn't matter. We can always talk to bands about the best way to speak about themselves and their music. Some bands do need a little bit of briefing. Some people don't like promoting themselves that much and feel a bit awkward about doing interviews or awkward about going on radio. So part and parcel, though, if you want to promote your stuff often, it's a bit of a...
I find that's really a thing with Australian artists, that you try and... on the other side of the game as a journo, whenever I'm interviewing an Australian artist, it's quite hard to get them to admit they're good at something or to promote something. Like, typical interview with an Australian upcoming artist is... you'll ask them about their most recent record, and their response will be, "Well, we just got in a room with a couple of mates," and and that's not a story that you can use.
Well, we have a band like that at the moment who we spoke to. They've got a great album coming out, but they admitted that there's no great story behind it. Like, there's no themes running throughout the album. There's no one event that inspired it. There's no topical stuff interwoven in the lyrics, you know. And they were just quite open about that, and we're like, cool, that's no problem. I think the songs are strong enough to speak for themselves. So, I mean, the campaign that we're doing with them is very much radio focused. We just want people to play the tracks. They're really strong tracks, so that's great. And we won't do a lot of interviews, because if there's not a story to be told, I'm not going to start asking journalists to really dig deep and do some research if the band's going to be like, just got in the studio and laid down some tracks and thought it was fun. There's no story,
it's definitely hard with that sort of thing. I think a band needs to know that people want to hear from them as well. I've interviewed bands for magazines where it has been, you get nothing from them, and it's sort of like, why are you letting me do this interview? Like, this is to help you. This isn't to help me.
Yeah.
I'm doing this interview for your new album.
Yeah.
And you ask him a question and you get like a 4-word answer. You go like, how am I typing this into anything?
Yeah.
Like, I got 1,200 words to work with here and you've given me nothing.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, hopefully a publicist will help them kind of untangle some good stories that they can use in press. But if there's nothing, there's nothing.
What do you think the best avenue for promotion is at the moment, in terms of...
What do you mean?
Well, like, so Instagram seems to be what most, whatever the generation is underneath mine, use. I don't think they have a title.
Is it like social media? Or
Gen Z, yeah, it's in like social media. Do you think that's where artists should be focusing more of their time if they are doing themselves versus the traditional sort of media outlets like, your magazines or your blogs or something like that? Do you think knowing how to make those snackable pieces of content,
I think it depends
is important?
What kind of band you're dealing with and what their audience is like. What applies to one band might not apply to others. If it was like a older kind of, rock band who have been around the traps for many decades, I think there's their audience is kind of reading newspapers and listening to community radio, so it would really rely on those outlets. I don't think Instagram or Twitter is going to be
not
as
help
important
for them,
for them, but for like the really young ones who do have a young fan base, and it really is important that they're on social media all the time trying to build it. It depends. Case by case. Yeah,
and it has to go to with what's authentic for them as well.
Yeah,
you think about it, like a band like AC/DC. Well, I guess there's some benefits of them having Instagram. I can't really imagine any of them actually being tech savvy at all. A good example is John Travolta. Mm-hmm. He's got Instagram. And the dude does really awkward selfies. The dude's it's like a grandparent trying to learn to use Skype.
But that works for John Travolta, surely.
That's funny.
But that's what it is. And you go mate, I get what you're trying to do, and good on you, but you're a little bit out of your depth. It's not authentic.
Well, I think it's important that you see a lot of big bands too. Obviously, have people just populating those feeds for them.
Yeah.
Just being there's tickets on sale now for this, and my album is out in 2 days, and this gig is coming up. And I think that's if you're purely relying on social for self-promotion in that way, it doesn't work. So it's important to be authentic, and we do help our artists with social.
Yeah, I was going to
sometimes
touch on that.
Yeah, sometimes, especially really, really new ones, because often it is hard to, especially when you don't like promoting yourself, you feel uncomfortable or not sure what kind of stuff to share. So we sit down with them and figure out what's going to work for them and the audience that they're going for. Sometimes it is staying relatively quiet, but sometimes it's worth just going gangbusters. Depends on the act. But always important that it's authentic. Yeah, I think those channels people are tuning right out as soon as it feels like a bot.
That's it. I think you can tell. And then you can also sort of tell by, for instance, if it's Instagram, what's written in the caption. There's certain bands that well, for instance, Frank would be a good one. You can tell by what he's written on his own posts, and because of how, I'm going to say flamboyant his wording is, the way that he speaks, I think that if someone took over his social media, you'd notice.
Yeah, totally.
And he always puts different things in, and he's got his own flair. So if he was you take care of this sort of thing, it wouldn't work. No, totally. People would, and I think people would guess it straight away.
This is a bit of an abstract question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. When you see bands like Northlane are a good example of this, and they have 999,000 followers or whatever it is that they have, and then they only follow 19 people, do you feel that's strange? Or
I think everyone feels that strange. I think everyone looks at that and goes, "That's not calculating."
Yeah. And do you think that's... No, you see, because I assume that they've done it on purpose to make themselves look cooler, right? And,
do you? They're follow anyone. If someone follows 0 people and you're like...
There's no way that they could have built that level of following without having started out with a network that represented as them following more people than what follow them.
It's funny, that relationship, isn't it? When you're like, well, you're clearly not following enough people to warrant.
I'd never really thought about that before, but that seems to be the
but
case.
It is a thing. You do kind of do it subconsciously, don't you? You're like, what's that about?
Yeah.
It's just the same as you start to judge someone if they're following more people than they have followers.
Yeah. It's you're not worthy of my time because not enough people. And I wonder, is that part of your job you have to worry about?
No, that has nothing to do with us. That's never occurred to me. But
so we're not doing PR, all right? We'll leave that to you.
Yeah,
it's interesting, but
Because, like, I, by the way, just to clarify, because this is going to end up in the pod, I have no problem with North Lane at all. Right?
I like them a lot.
I like all of the dudes in the band, and I like the band. But I just think
it's an interesting power play, though, isn't it?
I just find it really funny that, but it's not just them; it's all of their acts. Like, all of that label's acts are in that position, and I wonder if that's part of their social strategy.
I think it works. I automatically think that they're like cool dudes.
See, so you're younger than me, so this works as as an example of how.
You're just like, if that ratio is so far swinging this way, they are so cool.
And it's kind of like they get to do like low-key elitism, but it's passive aggressive, so they can't actually get called out on it. And it works though.
So it's their job to make sure punk rock's elite, basically.
It's like Mean Girls. You can't sit with us. It's like you're out of the top 8. You're not in my top 8 friends on MySpace.
MySpace, bring it back.
That's fascinating.
Please don't.
Keep researching and get back to me.
I will. I will. I want to know how you get that following anyway. Like, that's insane to me. Like, and is testament to whatever their marketing teams are doing and whatever their publicity teams are doing, and I know you've worked with them yourself before. Yep. It's an interesting point of view. You've worked with Parkway Drive, haven't you?
Yep.
They strike me, always have struck me when I've been working on the press side of things, but also when I was a younger band supporting them at the start. How genuine and authentic they are in the messages that they put out, and how their marketing paraphernalia and their publicity seems to tie in with their personalities really well. How much of what you've done with them has come from their genuine, I suppose, passion and want to push a certain angle, or is stuff that you've suggested to them? I suppose they're easy to work with.
They are a dream to work with. They're absolute dream.
Yeah,
I vouch for them 100%.
Yeah.
No, they're great. They're professionals, and they have done it themselves from the ground up. So I think they have an understanding of what's required. Again, like I said, there's nothing that gives you insight into what you're paying people for, like having done it yourself and going, well, I now understand what each member of my team is doing. And they still do a lot of it themselves. Like, they're very hands-on. And they are, like, legit. Winston is one of the loveliest people I've ever met, so that doesn't hurt, because every time he sits down with an interviewer, they love him. And again, the no assholes rule. You do feel more compelled to help out and even write bigger pieces. You know, when we were doing Press for Reverence, people would go, there might be a half-page story up for grabs, but Winston is very verbose and smart and very kind, and that can turn to a 2-page spread simply because he does say interesting things and is very kind, and that goodwill seeps out everywhere. So they were very easy to work with in that. By this stage, they've got a very good reputation for being great guys, and obviously a fucking huge band.
Yes, enormous.
So it's kind of a dream situation for us, because we just have to essentially put the feelers out and let everyone know that Parkway has a new album. It's a very good album. Half our job's done.
And I think that's another thing that's very attractive about this band is, from watching interviews like on YouTube and seeing them on things, they're very down to earth, and they come across as that. Totally. And one thing that I noticed, and maybe it's not even just me, but he gets on stage and there's no American accent that gets put on like so many other Australian bands do. Yeah. And for me, like, it makes me, like, my skin crawls as soon as they have that thing where he gets up there and you go, yeah, that guy's from, Byron.
Yeah.
And you go, he sounds just Australian.
And he thanks everyone for coming, and he thanks them profusely multiple times throughout the set.
And he always acts like the people that he's in interviews with are his best friends that he's known for ages. Yeah. And he just talks just normally.
Yeah, he does. And he thanks everyone at the conclusion of interviews and thanks them for their time and thanks them for covering his band, which by the time you get to be that big a band, I can imagine he would have done so much press by now. Like, it would be staggering the amount of interviews that Winston would have done these days. And I can see, I can understand fully if he was a bit over it. and was a bit short and a bit tired and kind of blew people off. We're used to dealing with bands at that stage of their career where they actively see a publicist email them and go like, oh, fuck off. Yeah. We've dealt with a lot of bands like that, and often that is the case. They've just done so much press for themselves.
So the
fact that he's done that much and he's still at the conclusion of a call goes, thanks very much for your time. Thanks for talking to me and talking about the album.
It's obviously amazing. It's probably a pretty good tip for bands that might happen to be listening to this. Just don't be an arsehole, don't be a dickhead. Be appreciative of the fact that people...
Exactly, and that can open up doors.
Yeah,
page space. You go from a quarter page to 2 pages because people are inclined to share their goodwill. Pay it forward.
Yeah,
do you a favour.
They're likely not talking to you about your band because they aren't interested in helping you succeed.
Exactly.
Right? They're talking to you for a reason. You've given them a reason to talk to you.
Yeah, and I think that band have embedded goodwill from all these years. Like, they've always been very lovely, to the point where some of the country's most respected journalists at the biggest newspapers, I just had to say Winston's going to talk about his album, and they're like, I love Winston. I'd be happy to do that for him. There's a lot of, especially now that the industry is getting smaller and things are really hard, and as a mate kind of referred to it, they're all seagulls fighting over the one chip.
Yes.
You know, resources are stretched, finances stretched, jobs are disappearing. I think people are more and more inclined to be reciprocal in their favours. Is me a favour, or do you a favour? Just, establish a good relationship and pay it forward. And then if you feel like someone's been particularly kind to you and come out and supported your band when you know they have a billion other things on, and you can do the same for the next band, and you notice a band gave you a really good leg up because they gave you a support slot for their headlining gig, you then do the same for bands of that stature. I think so much of the, especially heavy music communities, are built on.
And that's another thing that Parkway's known for, is their love and support for local acts and for the smaller acts. They always go for getting their people, and they shout those bands out. Like, they'll thank the opening act for playing with them, and get people to clap for them. Yeah, they do that, and openly their love for Polaris, obviously being similar area and region. It can be one thing to be all talk and go, oh yeah, but then to go, all right, well, not only that, we're putting you on a tour with us, and not just Australia, but you're then going to come to Europe with us and do the same thing. And it's kind of I think they're a band that has that power, that they can go, oh, we want this band on tour with us.
Yep.
And they make that happen. Yep. And look how much that's helped other bands by them being able to do that.
Totally.
Okay, I know that you've got a life to get back to, so we won't keep you for much longer.
A life?
But, well, you do. You have your own life and then the life of a daughter, right? So
a son.
Son, sorry. My apologies.
Fine. No, fine.
I misgendered them. That's got to come out of the out of the pod.
Really, no worries.
But that actually makes me want to ask a question. Is that obviously you've been working in the music industry for what? 20 years or something.
Whoa! No, 15.
Sorry, 15 years.
She's still got another quarter until it
Yeah, I got 5 more years.
15 years. What would you say the biggest misconception is that people have of your job and what you do?
Of PR?
Yeah, of PR, or just of the industry in general.
Oh, that it's particularly well paid.
Yeah.
There definitely was a time when music was well paid, I believe. Imagine just buying $30 for an album like we all used to for a CD. $10 for a single. There was a time when that was how you got your music. You paid $30 an album. So you can imagine the revenue that music industry was generating around, I think, peaked in about 2001, just before I arrived. But, so there was a time when it was a lucrative industry, and I'm sure, all the cocaine news that we joked about was quite rampant, and, and I have heard some fucking stories that made me go, my God, that is not what it's like today. But it's not. It's suffered in the same ways, that musicians have suffered for lack of revenue from their music. Everyone's adapting and managing to still have jobs and still play gigs and survive as a manager or a booker or a guitarist. But it's a slog, and it's not particularly well paid.
Yeah, musicians have had to move away from the cocaine and like just deal with weed instead. Right?
Totally, yeah.
Ditch weed.
Yeah, I mean, it's not particularly glamorous or well paid, and I think most people are really doing it for the love of it, genuinely. Like, no one's hanging out in music to make mad cash. Like, everyone in the industry especially could probably do similar jobs in a different industry and make a lot more money that way. But they're all staying in music, basically, for the love of it, so...
I'd say that's a pretty good tip for being a rat.
I would as well.
For being what?
A rat.
Adult. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So a rat adult. So
yeah,
pretty
right.
much you're at a disadvantage financially because of doing something that you love, but at the same time, like, there has to be some sort of enrichment in doing that, otherwise you wouldn't be doing it.
Yeah,
You know,
totally. I
so-
mean, not always. There are people who are probably getting paid really mad cash for doing something they love. Maybe they have truly reached... They've truly made it at that point when they're actually rolling in it for doing stuff they love. But, yeah, it's kind of acknowledging that that you could be making a lot more money if your skills were applied to another industry, and going, no, I think I will still work in music because it's still fulfilling, and I will not make that much money, and I'll be cool with it. I think a big part of being a Radult would probably be making, deciding that's okay, because there will be so many instances in your life. For example, a friend of mine started doing PR for like a company like Craft or something, and she told me her wage, and I was just like, what? Another table flip.
Yeah.
Amazing. Like, essentially a similar job to mine, but double the wage, and I was like, oh my god, have I fucking made the right decision? Like, imagine how much money I could have, and like how cool that would be, and all the things I would buy. And I'm like, I don't really want that much stuff.
Yeah.
And then being a Radult is negotiating with yourself and always coming up going, the money is not the biggest driving factor. It's certainly not for Deathproof. It's important that we can pay our rent or mortgages, and that we can travel. Beck and I really still love to travel, and important that the company allows us to do that. But beyond that, we don't have to make a stack of cash. It's like I said, if it can help us be flexible and do other things with our time, and we can be our own bosses and dictate when we come into work and stuff. Like, I reckon the ability to be like, I'm going to work 10 till 5 on Friday, and then I'm going to work 6 till 2 on Tuesday, and then I'm going to take Friday off because it's my partner's birthday, and then I'm going to work 9 till 6 the entire next week. That flex is worth 20k for me.
Yeah, I can see that.
Or when my kid is sick, not being like, oh my fucking god, how am I going to call this in and figure it out with my boss? The ease of picking up the phone to Beck and going, Wise, sick again, and her going, no worries, let me know if you need me to do shit.
And then
that's worth 20k as well, like,
completely.
There is worth in the things that Deathproof affords me, and being barefoot at my desk, that's 5k.
And then
I know how much your friend gets paid now.
But then you get the added benefit later down the track when your child's in school and they do go to your parents' work day, or they bring you in to talk about careers.
Oh, I'm
and then
about
you
that.
automatically get the coolest one.
Yeah, I know. Imagine the show and tell.
Yeah, fuck the firefighter over in the corner, or the guy that works in accruement. No one cares about that. You turn around and go, so I get to do this, and this, and be barefoot at my
so
desk.
Far from now. Oh my god, I'm not going to be working in music 10 years from now.
Wow.
I'll be at Craft. Rolling in it.
For would-be Radults listening, there's an opening in PR in about 10 years.
There are 100% is.
Would you have any advice for publicists or people that have just finished a comms degree at university and are looking to get involved in the industry? Would you say to try and find one of the very rare opportunities that still exist, or to try branch out themselves?
I would never have branched out myself without 6 years at the label, to be honest, because the relationships I already had set up with media and with the industry were just literally what enabled us to just be okay, do this now, I don't know how you would do that if you didn't already have relationships. I think that would be difficult. What was the other question? Oh, I reckon I always tell graduates and stuff to try and just get a little bit of work experience all over the shop. Yeah. So in corporate PR, and then maybe in arts or whatever they want to do, government sector maybe. Because I reckon the internships provide you with a really unique experience, even if it's just for a day or like 2 days, to sit in the corner of someone's office, and the amount of shit that you see even go down in the office, as well as the work you do, provides pretty interesting insight into what the job would involve. And I think it can be really easy to imagine quite fancifully that, you know, music is incredible and PR is exactly where you want to be, and then perhaps sit in the corner of an office for a while and realise that that's not the kind of environment you want, or that's not what you're looking for. And then maybe, you know, you get insight when you go to craft. Yeah. And maybe you are more inclined to work in a more structured environment. And maybe marketing sounds a bit more up your alley, because it's kind of, the two are very closely related. One, you have money to speak with. The other, you just have your charms. You know, to get insight into a bunch of different workplaces would be my suggestion for a comms graduate. Awesome. Yeah, I think it would show you and give you some insight.
Interesting last question for you, because you have a comms degree.
Yeah.
Right?
Media degree.
Yeah. Was it worth getting?
No.
And that's the sound clip we're using for promoting that. It's just this question.
I mean that from the point of view, like, so did that formal education aspect help you in any way, or should you have just gone, bam, I'm going for this, I'm going to figure it out?
It's hard to say, because you don't know, you know, the butterfly effect thing. You don't know. It probably could have subconsciously. I feel like formal education. No.
Cool. No, is alright.
No, I don't. I honestly don't. I think it burdened me with a significant HECS debt, which I still have a grudge against to this day.
Me too.
And I still think, because of my start was at Beat Magazine, when I did work experience and an internship, and then I started writing for them, which is a pretty modest start, but I think that opened the doors for me. And I don't think Beat gave a shit about my communications degree. I think they're a very busy media outlet who are more than happy to have someone come in and enthusiastically wrap CDs for them 5 days a week. And I don't think any of those things really. I don't think people in music really give a shit about a degree. I know when people apply for jobs for us, I'll look at it and I'll take it into account, but it certainly would never, ever be a deal breaker if someone didn't have a tertiary degree.
I think that definitely the music industry is more who you know, not what you know, as far as that.
Yeah, exactly. Because the beat editor gave me the tip-off for the shock job, and that was all just because I, knew the right people. It was probably I'm not going to try and justify my degree.
Wonderful. That's an answer to the question.
Is that what you think people want to hear?
So
Don't worry about studying?
I think so. I think the internet is also a valuable resource. You can always look up YouTube how to do this, and there'll be someone explaining to you how to do it. No, but things like how to edit this video. You can totally find that off YouTube or off Creative Life or something like that.
Okay, I just thought of something. I had to do an internship as part of my 3rd year of media, and that forced me to do work experience at Beat. I can't say I wouldn't have done it if I didn't have anything else to do, but that's what gave me my start. So, is that something?
Yes, it is. I also had to do an internship in the 3rd year.
Did you? What did you study?
Media and communication at RMIT.
RMIT. Oh, that was a course I wanted to get in, but my intern wasn't high enough. There you go.
But you ended up in a way better place. So.
Well, look, different, times are different. I think with music, it really depends on when you enter into the industry. I came about when it was still selling CDs. I
came in for the death rattle, which happened 30 years after Lester Bangs predicted it. So thank you very much for being on the Radults podcast.
Thanks for having me.
No worries. We've decided that you're a certified Radult.
Yep,
certified Radult. You've got the sticker, you've got the bottle opener. All we need now is the photo, which is something we're going to ask you to do in a moment. And then we will let you get on with the rest of your day. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. As always, like, rate, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you next week.